If you are watching this through Facebook, please mind that we cannot react to your comments. If you want to participate and ask Kay or me any questions, or if you have important remarks to be made, move to Twitch, and there you can participate in the chat. So again, warm welcome to everyone, but especially to you, Kay Cook. You have worked, I think, quite some years and very hard to develop a program called Happy Brain. I'm not sure whether everyone who is watching knows Happy Brain. So can you shortly introduce Happy Brain before we delve into the more deeper aspects of the model you created?
I certainly can, and if I was very organised, I'd even have the book in front of me, but I haven't. I'll find it in a moment. In 2010, I was invited to create a program, a creative program to work in schools to help teachers and young people overcome barriers to learning. So this the first part of that was the brief, and in helping them to overcome barriers to learning, I came up with a project which subsequently, well, I called it Happy Brain, and it has subsequently grown into a training program, a coaching program. We've got a book, all sorts of really cool, fun things that have happened as a result of that. But essentially, the original model was to find a really, really simple way using play and creativity to help people learn better, faster, easier, and just have a more successful existence.
Excellent. Well, that sounds good. And so you're, if I understood correctly, this is especially to help young children deal better with emotions.
Well, initially, yes, that was true. Initially, that was the program, but actually, in my heart of hearts, I always knew it was what I would call a stealth model,
Hmm?
because I knew that by helping people to help their children, they have to go through that helping themselves. Dog just came in and all that. So it was all conscious attention was on helping young people to learn to self-manage their emotions, to become more resilient, to learn a simple way of understanding what was happening inside their brain and all of these feelings and sensations that they had. But also it was always about encouraging the adults to understand how much more influence they have over the way that their children are developing. And these days we apply it in the workspace with all ages now, different versions of the model. But the essential model was for children and young
Okay.
people.
So there's now Happy Brain for everyone, not only children.
Yes, exactly. Well, isn't
Good.
that a great thing to aspire to?
No, no, I'm a big fan of negativity. I think negativity has got a bad rap.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not kidding. People think I'm kidding. Good. And now you wanted to show me the model that you made,
Sure.
and then we are going to see how much of your model fits with my view of how things hang together. I hate to say how reality. What is real and what is not real, because that would mean that we would know what reality is. And one of the departing points of NLP is that we don't know what reality is. But in German and in Dutch, there's a beautiful word. It's samenhang in Dutch, Zusammenhang in German, and it's very difficult to translate to English. But it's literally translated how things hang together. And I think that is the best way to describe if you want to if you want to avoid talking about reality. So you're going to present your model. I think it's called Brainscape, if I remember that correctly, and then we're going to discuss it whether how much it fits with how I think that things hang together.
Okay. So let me just kind of rewind a little bit to how this model came about. This is just one of the very many models that we use within Happy Brain. because in order for me to understand something, I have to build it in a way that makes sense to me. And so that's how this arrived. If you recall a few moments ago, I said that the very first brief was, how do we overcome barriers to learning?
Mm-hmm.
Now that does not make sense to me, and anybody who is in our field, it doesn't make sense to them, because we're learning machines, as Richard
Yes.
says. Our brains are phenomenal learning machines. We're learning all the time. The question is,
You
what are
cannot.
we learning?
Yes, you can't stop learning.
That's right. So our brains are constantly building new connections, pruning old connections, reinforcing important connections.
No, we're not doing that at all. It depends on the age group.
Well,
So
let's just keep it generalized. So, because I just want this simple model that, if you remember, I teach this to children and parents and teachers and
yes.
adults, depending on who I'm
Okay.
interacting
Then
with.
I have an important question before you start, because there are two modes of communications. One is to clarify stuff, and other is to influence people. Are you building a model to influence people or to clarify things?
Influence them.
Oh,
Or
but then
actually, I know, I think there's a third one, Joost.
no, there
And
isn't.
there is the invitation for the person to use the model usefully,
That's called
and
influence.
okay, to be able to influence themselves or clarify things for
And
themselves.
if you want them to behave differently, then you're trying to influence them.
Maybe. Yeah.
Not maybe. But the point is that if it's a model to influence people, then anything goes. So it's really not, I say, that important whether it will fit any viewpoint. It is whether people actually change or not is the whole point.
Mm.
Unlike if it's to clarify, then you can actually discuss whether the model clarifies how things hang together or not.
Yeah, well, just to be clear up front to anybody, I'm not a fan of boxing things in and labeling them unless it's useful. So if I want to clarify something through the model, I might use it that way. Or if I want to influence somebody through the model, I might use it that way.
Yes, they
I
go hand in hand.
like the idea that it has to be one or the other.
No, it doesn't have to be the one or the other, but I say they go hand in hand because in order to influence someone, it's often very handy if you clarify stuff. And if you clarify stuff, it's very important also influence people to do something with whatever you've done to clarify. Nevertheless, the intent, whether you are uh, willing, whether you are trying to influence them or trying to clarify stuff, makes a lot of difference in whether you apply language patterns, for instance. Because if you influence people, then anything goes. So I can't. I say I can't criticize you if you use a model to influence people. Only for the small part where the I just had to move myself because I was in front of the for the whiteboard. That's a small issue that I overlooked. Do I say that? So I can't criticize any model if the model is used to influence people, and obviously it's working in the influence part. You can only criticize a model that is used to influence people if it doesn't influence people. But any other, there is no other critique. But if you have a model that wants to clarify stuff of how things hang together, then we can actually have a critique or a discussion about whether that is a handy model to use in with the purpose of clarification.
Okay. So that sounds to me like you, of course, you're miles ahead of where I am at in explaining it, because what I want to do is to start off by explaining how I created the model. How I use it is a very different thing, and actually I use it in different ways, and I modify it regularly according to who I'm using it with and what I want the outcome to be. And of course, in the how, all the language patterns, the symbolism, the metaphors, the loops that I might have set up with my clients during the work, all of those things are taken into account. But if it's okay with you, I find this kind of cool as to how this came about.
I'm
So
going to sit quietly here and listen to you explain how you came about everything.
no, Joost, you never sit quietly. Come
I
on.
can sit very quietly.
So the first level is sort of asking the question of, okay, so what are barriers to learning? If we assume that we don't need to assume, I think we can all, the brain is a magnificent learning machine. It's learning in each and every moment about something. The question is what? So it was clear from that brief that what the schools were talking about was learning the curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
very specific thing.
Yes.
But of course, I kind of wanted to step away from that and look at the general theme of how do we learn.
Mm-hmm.
And in my sort of research and sort of putting the model together, first of all, I recalled something that an educational psychologist had shared with me many, many years ago when I was looking very specifically at something called dyspraxia,
Mm-hmm.
with neurological immaturity. And but this is in the days when it wasn't a commonly used word as well. So this lady called Madeline Portwood was the UK's leading authority on dyspraxia. And so the first level of the model is what she taught me. And
Right.
it's something like, this is your brain,
Mm-hmm.
and your brain is not flat. So you have to already hallucinate this giant hologram.
Are you
You've got
calling that I have a thick head?
no.
Okay.
Billions of nerve cells, neurons, that we're born with, and the signals that fire between these nerve cells at birth are few and far between. They are a bit random. There's an argument to say that we're predisposed to certain neural pathway activation. But if we just assume, and this was her teaching, that you have a small baby lying in its crib, randomly moving, because that's its instinct to randomly move, and one day it touches accidentally an overhanging stimulus response thing, a mobile, and it gets a nice.
Come again? Can you repeat the last point that you made? Because I didn't understand it.
So a baby is lying in its cot.
Yes,
Imagine yourself as a tiny baby.
I remember I was lying like this. Yes.
Yeah. And you're randomly moving,
Right.
just randomly moving, and your parents have kindly put, or your carers have kindly put, this lovely, big, shiny, bright thing overhanging. We call them mobiles.
Oh, now I understand. I
Yeah.
thought there was a mobile stimulus response moving through the head like something being mobile, but you were thinking of the actually mobile thingy that's
External. This is external.
external, yes.
Yeah, externally, there's a mobile externally.
Hence
The
my
baby-
misunderstanding.
Well, sorry, my miscommunication.
No, my misunderstanding.
So the baby accidentally connects to something that gives it a really big sensory feedback.
Right.
So we call that stimulus response, don't
Yeah.
we?
Well, yeah, it's stimulus response. It's just that the TOTI model is a just better model for the stimulus response reactions. Stimulus response is a bit too simple because you already explained that the baby is actually reaching out. So it might be that he somehow has an inclination that there is something, but he can't perceive it correctly. So he will move about his body and then get more in a position where he can actually touch it or see it better. So perception is not this passive receiving of signals, but perception is actually a very interactive activity with the environment and the body and the brain. And the TOTI model just basically is a much better explanation for what's happening than the simple stimulus response reaction.
Yeah, and I think also that what you're saying there highlights our instinct to move towards things, to explore them. That's we. That's our first level of movement, is to explore by moving towards something. So
Okay.
yes,
You have to explore stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to move forward to explore. It's very difficult to explore stuff running backwards.
well, I don't know. A lot of people do it well inside their minds, but we're talking physically, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay. So the so baby randomly moves, and one day touches the thing.
Right.
As a result of that, it gets a reward, which is, I'm making a green flag here, which I'll explain in a moment, because she didn't put green flags in here. But you know, it gets a reward.
Okay, but what is the reward the baby gets?
A sensory experience that it hasn't.
Yes, now I got the sensory experience, but that's not a reward. The reward's the only thing that you want something and that you get something.
I'm just taking the flag out because I want to just go back to what Madeline taught first of all. Okay,
Without
so they
flags.
randomly moving,
Yes.
and it's moving in its brain is connecting lots of things together, and then suddenly it gets a feedback from the outside world. So that might be a touch or a sound
Yes.
or something.
There's sensory data coming in.
Sensory data comes
Yes.
in a new way.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, baby, as a fast learner, very quickly can shortcut. And baby quickly learns to, instead of
Yes.
kind of movement, it learns to direct
Yes.
limb to get the sensory information,
Yes.
sensory data. So it shortcuts it. And if it repeatedly does that movement, that neural pathway becomes protected. It becomes insulated with myelin sheath, with the fat. The brain goes, this is useful. I'm going to keep this.
Yes, but I'm not sure whether the whole path. What happens is the individual axons of the the big long I say arm of the neuron. And that gets I don't know. I never heard it as called protected. But what happens in that is that their myelin sheets get attached to it, but that will actually decrease the electrical resistance. So because the pathway is used often, the brain adds molecules to the axon that makes it easier for the brain to fire that pathway. So that's how then in this case how an association starts to become between the reaching out and the well, if it's the mobile with bright light, then it's an association between the movement and the bright lights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's and this depth of information, of course, is useful if it's interesting, and,
Oh yeah.
and it's interesting to us.
You're
But remember,
calling me boring.
no, not at all. I love these stimulating conversations, as you know. But equally, I believe my job is to make things as simple as possible, so that anybody can grasp
Yes.
simple concepts.
I think your job is more than that.
Yes.
I think your job is to make it as simple as possible when you use this model to influence other people. But you also have a job of actually being able to clarify the model in great detail. Not for me, or not even for our viewers, but especially for your own brain. Because the better you formulate how the model works, the deeper your understanding is, but also the more optimal your own world model in your own brain becomes.
But just to clarify something,
Yep.
I'm not seeking to influence you yet, because this all I'm building is the very first level of a model that I use in different ways. So this is still
Yes,
at the
but
level
I'm
of,
trying to influence you. I'm trying to improve your already wonderful world model even further.
You haven't got to my world model yet, Joost. You have to be patient.
No, oh, wait. Everything you learned and experienced, uh, all these connections that you're now drawing out, that within NLP we call this complete collective of the complete set of all those connections. That's what we call the world model. So only if you're not learning anything from this talk, then I have not reached your world model. Otherwise, you can't help it but learn stuff.
Oh, absolutely. That was the point, wasn't it? How can we learn more about our learning?
Exactly.
Okay. So the key point here was that Madeline Portwood was an expert in dyspraxia, and what she was explaining was that some kids didn't learn, or were unable to make this shortcut.
Okay.
So they would continue to what was then known as clumsy child syndrome. They would continue to have lots of additional movements,
Right.
because they couldn't make this shortcut.
And what age group were those kids?
Oh, dyspraxia is a lifelong
Okay.
thing, but it
And she
can
studied.
be trained in childhood. It can be retrained.
Right.
We
Exactly.
know that now, and this is in the late 80s when it was just not really a known thing. So
Yes.
let's not get distracted by dyspraxia. I just wanted to bring to you how, when I had to come up with something that went on to become Happy Brain, I wanted to understand, for me, a little bit more about how there could possibly be barriers to learning.
Right.
So I first of all remembered what Madeline taught me.
Yes.
And
But we
that's
have to make sure that the inputs in your model are clear and concise and I say a good explanation of how things hang together. Because we don't want garbage into your model.
Well, I'm sure you'll coach you there.
I didn't follow that.
You'll be able to coach the garbage out.
Okay. Well, you're a much more positive person than I am. I already hearing.
So then I thought, okay, so then let's put some NLP filters in
Right.
on top of this model. And I was thinking about, okay, so in NLP we talk about meta programs of towards and away from.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that in mind, I kind of came up with this simple idea of putting red flags and green flags inside this two-dimensional model
Right.
of things that we learn to move towards
Right.
and things that we learn to move away from.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this as a path of repetition.
Right.
But we also know that learning can happen in an instant if there is a strong electrochemical combination and a certain brain wave. That whole instantaneous learning, as we know, can happen. So if we look at the pathways to learning as either repetition, so therefore you just know how to do something without thinking, it just happens. Without much consciousness. And another pathway to learning is you get this big electrochemical result. And I translated that into flags because people.
But now it sounds as if the red flag is the big traumatized learning in an instant due to all the brain chemicals.
No, what it teaches us is what to avoid.
Yes. No, I do agree with you that our brain learns where to go to and what to avoid, but I don't think that it's a different area in the brain. So the way it works is that this is called instrumental learning. So it's different from associative learning, and it basically makes the brain makes connections between neurons based on the idea that, okay, this is behavior that actually gets me what I want, and that is the moving towards. And but what happens is, in the case of, if you are punished or get a penalty for your behavior, then the brain thinks, "Ooh, I should avoid this this pattern." But the pattern is still the same. I say the same stream of neurons that actually moves towards something. But by changing the chemicals on the axons, the amount of energy and the electric differential that is needed to activate that pattern is increased. So the behavior is still possible. It's still being able. You can go there, but it's much more harder for the brain to activate that pattern. There are no patterns in the brain where a neuron fires. Okay, now I'm moving. I'm telling the brain to avoid something. It's just that there are, all the patterns are basically, this is behavior that I can do. That I can positively do. It's basically the same as the well-formed outcomes with NLP. The brain is learning what it can do. And then it learns that with all the things that it can do, there are some things that actually gets you what you want. So you want to do more of that. And there are other things that actually lead to trouble, penalties, and punishment. And then the brain makes it harder to fire those patterns. But the pattern still goes somewhere. It's not, so the brain has patterns to activate behavior rather than avoid behavior. The way it avoids behavior is by making patterns that lead to penalties and punishments more difficult to fire.
But in terms of how, if you then, let's just jump into, okay, so if I am working with a client who has a simple one, a fear of bridges.
Yes.
So we could, using this simplicity, we could say anything connected to bridges, right? Anything connected to bridges, any lifelong experience, sensory data connected to bridges will arrive at a chemical signal that says, don't go there, don't do it.
No.
I'm not talking about what happens inside the brain, it's the behavior.
Yes.
As a result of the electrical, chemical.
So a fear of a fear of going to a bridge. So there's still a pattern. I can go to the bridge. That's still a behavioral pattern that is possible. Somehow bridges have been experienced as punishments in the past because negative stuff happened at bridges after they moved to the bridges. So the brain has made it very difficult to activate the pattern of going to the bridge. At the same time, there's also an association being built between the bridge and the bad feelings. So those two things happen at the same time. So it's difficult for the person to activate the pattern, I'm going to the bridge. And at the same time, all internal behavior where they talk, inner self talk about bridges, or when they hear people from, hey, let's go to the bridge, external signals about bridges, that triggers the negative associative feelings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I agree with you.
But those are two different, neurocortical pathways.
Yeah, but this is a metaphor, and I want.
Yeah, I know there are no real flags inside my brain, but I'm trying to figure out whether what your flags. So their flags are a metaphor, and the model is a metaphor, but I'm still trying to figure out what the metaphor is for.
Okay. Well, let me give you another example. Here's anybody who's trained with me in the not anybody. A lot of our Happy Brain live workshop trainings, we would create, and it doesn't work on Zoom, but we would create something, like this.
Right.
Now, we could spend half a day looking at just metaphorically, what are the red flags for you?
But do you mean for me as an individual that I notice that I for instance, I hate birthdays, of my own. I don't hate birthdays. I hate my own birthday because I think that I'm getting
Happy
closer to
birthday
my.
for last week, Joost.
Yes, I just turned 50, but for me it's just another year closer to my grave. Um, so it's that would be that would be a red flag for me inside my head. But do you mean it in that way, or do you mean it as more as trying to understand how the brain works? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay. So to answer that, it is finding out more about you.
Okay, so it's more personal.
The
I have
happy,
to discover that my own birthday, is a red flag for me.
yeah.
Okay, I'm following you
So
again.
if we, I mean, in NLP, we took 90% of our communication is gathering information, and the way that we use happy brain is gathering information through play.
Mm-hmm.
So we can be playing in a model like this. We can play in a model like this on the floor with cars, with helicopters, with any moving thing,
Right.
to gather more information about what is true for this person and through their filters, it's their perception. And by using red flags, amber flags, green flags, we anchor something in that may or may not be useful because we're gathering information.
Right. But now I'm confused again. What are the amber flags?
Well,
You didn't say anything about amber flags yet.
that's very true, and often I don't use them.
Okay.
This is one I just picked up. I just came past where I store these things, and I just picked this one off. They were all flat stored like that, so I just corrected them. So this, I don't even know whose this was. This is somebody somewhere that I've worked with.
Looks like Boris Johnson.
The amber flag must have represented something.
Okay.
To the person using.
It's just I'm not seeing the colors that well. The red flag is now I see the difference between the red flag and the amber flag. Good.
So there's a lot of information stored in these flags, and it's our job to unpick as much as we think is useful, keeping the person out of their story, their narrative, and importantly with children, we don't want them to think that they're in therapy and they've got a problem and they need help.
Yeah.
Because we can do this by going, have you ever, bear in mind, this is often just in my mind. I don't necessarily, and even if I was to draw this, each time I draw it, it's going to look completely different. If anybody's watching this who's seen me draw this before, it'll be different every time.
Right. No, I understand. This is the how you influence children and parents part by joyful, playful things. That I all get. This is all hypnosis and technique. But I'm still worried about your world model inside your head.
Are you?
Yes.
What's the worst thing for you about that?
I don't know yet. I'm just have this feeling of worry. I'm not clear where the feeling is coming from, but I'm happy to discover more about your model, and either the feeling disappears. Huh?
Did you read my book yet?
No, I haven't got your book yet.
I've got all yours.
Yes. All the one that is published in English too. Yes. Well, good.
So, I cannot. Come on, Joost. I can't explain to you my model in even if we spent 24 hours on here. The model is about responding to what's in front of you using play and creativity, and everything that we.
Yeah. No, I'm totally 100% on board with you for that part.
What I was interested in though was the ABC learning, the anticipation, the actual behaviors, the consequences of behaviors. I think that's kind of cool, because again you can have those conversations saying, okay, so you can just sit and think about that red flag, and then what happens?
Right.
And so
Well,
then the chemicals come, and how does that feel? And where do you feel it in your body, and how is it moving? And then we can, you bring in our
yeah, I
nurse.
think you can easily add the ABC model as part of the technique. So but let me first quickly explain it for the viewers what the ABC model is. So, ABC model is not an NLP model. It comes from applied behavioral analysis. It's a precursor of NLP. It's basically what scientists did before NLP changed the way we map human behaviors. And in the ABC model, the A stands for antecedents. It's everything what happens before behavior. B stands for behavior, it's an easy one. And then C stands for consequences. It's everything that happens after the behavior. And the research, it's overwhelming research, like 60,000 mostly animal research, shows clearly that the consequences have a way, way, way bigger impact on future behavior than the antecedents. Nevertheless, most of the time, coaches, trainers, and it goes for me as well, of course, they use antecedents to try and change people's behavior. And there, hypnosis is basically the only way that works, because with hypnosis you can easily change associative learning. So you can, where there's a bad, negative association built up in the past, you can use hypnosis to break it and replace it with a positive association. Nevertheless, instrumental learning, if you want your clients to, or the trainees or coaches to actually change their behavior long term, then you need to apply the ABC model. And what happens is basically that you need to make sure that for the desired behavior, there will be more positive consequences in the future. And for the undesired behavior, you have to remove positive consequences. So can you take your 3D thing with the flex again? Because my thinking is that basically if a child or a parent creates something like this, it's highly likely that the green flag will have not enough positive consequences for the person. So the green flag is the desired behavior. And my guess is that if someone creates this model like you have in front of you, then he or she is doing not enough of the desired behavior and too much of the undesired behavior. And that means that there are too many positive consequences for the undesired behavior. So for me, the next step would be to actually check it out and say, okay, how can we make sure that the green behavior that's now flagged as green, how can we add more positive consequences to that? The easiest way is to find the buddy. Most of the time, if you have parents, the older partner. If you have children, then the parents. That you create buddies that actually check whenever the person does the desired behavior, and then add positive consequences. Most of the time in the form of compliments. Nevertheless, for children, ice cream and money also works quite well. And yes, that sounds like bribing, but the bribe is offering it in front of it. That's the antecedent. If you have pay it out, that's a positive consequence. And then, but also to remove the positive consequences for the undesired behavior. Because if people do a lot of red stuff, then somehow the red flags gets them what they want. Either attention, or they don't have to go to school, or whatever it is. So that's how I would combine it at the level of a technique.
Yeah, absolutely. And also there's the question about whose brain are we looking at? Because if this is the child, let's just say this is a 10-year-old child's brain, there's a lot of information in there for us to gather, but we also need to have it alongside the brain of the parent who we are trying to influence to reward the child's brain in different ways.
Yes.
And that brain brings about a whole load of other problems.
Yes, and also there's a standard pitfall with the ABC model, is that the person providing the rewards, providing the positive consequences and the compliments, is not rewarded for giving out rewards. And that if you have a child and you see, okay, the desired behavior is, I don't know, dress quickly before going to school, then the parents need to put positive consequences to that, either through playtime on the game console, or money. I love money, so why not pay children? or ice cream or compliments, whatever. You have to check with the child whatever the child wants. But then the parents have to be buddies for themselves. So if the man sees his wife giving a compliment to the child, then he has to give his wife a compliment saying, wow, I just saw you give a positive consequence to our child. You did fantastic. Because that will make them addicted to actually rewarding the child. And so they keep on rewarding, because otherwise they will do it for 2 days or a couple of weeks and then stop rewarding the child, and then the behavior stops, and then everybody's complaining that the coaching didn't work or the training didn't work. But actually it all worked except the part where the parents forgot to reward each other.
Yeah, but I agree with everything you're saying.
Good.
It reminds me that, well, nearly everything, but it reminds me that the original conundrum for me was, how do we, let me just kind of rewind a little bit. We know, if we take NLP as an example of what I'm about to say, we know lots of people learn NLP techniques.
Right.
And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, because they're just using the techniques. Because unless you've got all of the other stuff that sits behind it, like how is this working, and what would happen if we did it this way, and what else can we find out about that client, and all of the extra stuff that requires creativity to ensure that the moment you press that domino, all of the dominoes follow. So I feel very strongly that if we step back, and this was my task to myself, was how to come up with a model which convinced parents, teachers, carers in the first instance, that the kids were learning. They were learning, the kids in question, the so-called naughty kids, they were learning how to survive often. They were learning how to have some kind of social connection, learning how to have some kind of primitive sense of safety, because those are highly valued in the brain. That's what they were learning, and so their strategies for survival might include being really naughty in class and getting loads of attention.
Yes, or getting kicked out of school and then have lots of free time.
Or whatever. But
there are many different positive consequences to negative behavior.
That's right. So, but conceptually, we have to get this idea that all brains are learning, and it's not that people can't learn, because they can. It's a question of what are they learning and how useful is the learning that they're gathering. And we know that regardless of what the flags look like in there, but we know that we can meet people maybe partway through their life whose map of the world has shrunk because they've had so many bad experiences, or negative rewards, negative feedbacks, that they've stopped doing very much, and they can't go outdoors, they can't talk to people, they can't. So it's almost as if they've shrunk their brain, and then they've lost contact with all of this extra bit.
Yes. So in NLP we would call it a poor world model. That you can, as an NLP coach or trainer, can enrich by making sure that either they have an hypnotic story that helps them open up to the possibility that they can do more, or if they have an experience through an NLP technique or through an hypnosis session, that they can experience that they can do more. And then the world model would, become richer. If you look at the neuroscience behind it, it's not, of course, not literally that the brain is shrinking. It is So there are two issues here. So if you look at the development of the child before puberty, they make lots and lots of connection, and the higher the variety of the experiences that they have, the more connections they make. So a child with a lot of variety would have like this kind of connections, and with low variety childhoods have like this. And during puberty, the brain is being pruned, and will actually, and the amount of connections that's being dropped is about the same. So it will both go down, but of course, if you start at a lower point, you'll end up with less connections than if you have a lot of variety in your childhood, puberty, then you will end up with more connections. And then, of course, from there on, like 21 on, the number of connections that remain almost the same, slightly more due to a couple of newer brain cells are being made, but that is very little, even though that's very powerful because of the exponential function of a network. But then you can basically strengthen or weaken connections. And what the connection that it strengthens is actually it lowers the amount of energy that is needed to fire the pattern. And what it means if to weaken a connection, it means that you actually increase the amount of energy that is needed to fire that pattern. So what happens when people have a lot of bad experiences is that their world model becomes poorer. But what happens neurological is that more and more connections are weakened, in the sense that you need more and more energy to actually fire them. They can still do everything, but it costs them too much to actually overcome that barrier. And so what we do with NLP and hypnosis is then actually take the already existing connections that are there, but we strengthen the ones that lead to desired behavior by actually lowering the amount of energy that the brain needs to fire those. If that's inside your world model, you have a fantastic world model, a very rich world model.
Yeah, and so, but again, you have to look at, we know that.
Yes.
But lots and lots of people don't.
No.
And so lots of people, let's take parents again, lots of parents assume that their world model is the model.
Yes.
And there is no other.
Unfortunately, they do.
And therefore, if they have an impoverished mental map, then they are highly likely to influence their child's mental map to be similarly.
Yes. Well, the obvious relationship is if you have parents where they only have a few connections that are actually firing off, and a lot of the connections are actually very difficult for the parents to fire off, it will directly influence the level of variety that the children have during their childhood, pre-puberty. So you immediately end up with children with less connections in the brain than. So I do a lot of work with professional football, in soccer or into football. It's for the Americans are watching soccer, but football for all also Europeans. And there you have there's a lot of brain studies being done. For instance, like the brain of Messi, the #1 world's best football player. And they can simply see that the density of all his connection is way, way much higher than what it used to be. And it has a lot to do with the amount of variety he had before he came into puberty. And then, of course, once puberty starts, then it's very important to specialize for pro footballers. So what we help football clubs with is actually stop them, because in Ajax, for instance, famous Dutch football club, they already have 8-year-olds playing football. And they play only football. But actually in Ajax they play a lot of different kinds of football. So they play on grass and on stone and in streets. But they only play football. But it's much better to also have basketball and baseball and all kinds of sports. But also have them go to museums, draw art, make music. Because the more variety the better. And how you say... so the clubs are a bit getting... It is changing within football, but once they reach puberty, you should just do football only if you want to get a child that becomes a pro football player.
Well, I used to be a sports coach, and I'm not personally. I have seen too many elite sports people discover difficulties later in life, so I kind of feel a little bit.
Yes, no, it's not a nice life for the child, but you make lots of money as parents. It's not.
What?
It's not about the life of the child.
I know.
Yeah.
But So again, you were saying before, we know that in birth to 7, roughly, the child's brain is simply imprinting what is going on around it. The nervous system of the child is imprinting from the nervous system of the primary caregivers.
Well, to be fair, this is just terminology, but imprinting is a very specific learning. So there are 3 ways that the brain actually learns. So we discussed already 2, associative learning and instrumental learning. The third way is imprinting, but it only happens in the first couple of months. So after that, it's just associative learning and instrumental learning. But again, it learns what the parents have learned.
And
But can you change a little bit of these numbers? So if you would change the second 7 to an 8 and the first 14 to a 13, then you actually have the same model I use, because then you have the Fibonacci series in mathematics.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
And
I'm working at a conceptual level here, because there's so much, it is that behind it all. Yes.
yes,
Birth to 7, 8 to 14, 15 to 21, 21 plus. You
exactly.
mentioned it
Yes.
before, it's the same model that I would use. But even that alone, most parents don't appreciate. They don't know.
No, they don't know it.
They've never been taught it. So
Yeah.
that's important for us to recognise
Definitely.
how that map is being created. And I also was thinking, back when I was putting the model together, I was thinking about, well, okay, Richard Richard teaches us the map is not the territory. What does that mean? What does the map actually look like? What does the map look like?
Yes. By the way, for people who are watching, Richard is Richard Bandler, the hippie who originally thought up of NLP as a way of getting his own field of inquiry, so that he would not have to deal with all kinds of authority figures that he didn't get along with. And the map is not the territory is a phrase from Korzybski, Science and Sanity. But unfortunately, the phrase is not, the map is not the territory and then dot. It's actually the sentence continues. It's quite a long sentence where it says the map is not the territory, and this is my short version, but has the same structure as the territory. Because that second part is very important, because I have no clue how they will use it in the UK. But in the Netherlands, NLP trainers, whenever they are found out to be idiots, they will say, well, the map is not the territory. The map is not the territory. Meaning you have your map and I have my map, and there's no way of making out which map is correct. Where in reality, maps have to have a similar structure of the thing they are mapping, in this case the territory. And
Exactly.
depending on what you want to use the map for, some maps are absolutely more useful, for instance mine's, than others. The maps of these idiotic NLP trainers that we have in the Netherlands here.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I just get very upset whenever I hear the map is the territory.
okay, let me just make a little note. Okay, don't mention.
No, you can mention it, but you have to follow through with the map is not the territory, but has the similar structure to the territory.
The purpose of my reference of that is convincing parents that their mental map does not have to be, and I see a lot of parents very concerned that because they recognise they've got an impoverished mental map, using
Yes.
our terminology, they go, oh yeah, I'm completely fucked up, I'm completely screwed up, I've done this, I did this, my childhood was horrendous, da da da. Oh my God, I'm going to ruin my child's future.
And they're right.
You can't have that. No, they're not right.
Yes.
That's
All
not.
parents ruin the future of their children.
I'm not buying that, sorry.
Okay. I thought you agree with everything I say.
No, I just tell you that.
Okay.
Because you like people to agree with you.
No, actually, I like people to disagree with me.
Ooh.
I don't learn anything if people agree with me. I'm addicted to learning, and if people say, "Oh, Joost, you're absolutely right," then I thought, "Fuck it, that's too bad," because I wish I learned something.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, all parents fuck up their kids.
Okay. I have yet to meet a parent who goes, I was a really great parent. I think we all, as parents, kind of think, oh, could have done that differently,
Exactly.
or you
But
know,
that,
whatever.
but the point is not that that they don't fuck. The point is not that they don't fuck up their kids. The point is that it doesn't matter that they fuck up their kids, because the brain is such a wonderful machine that even though your parents try to fuck you up, you still come out all right for most of the time.
I disagree with that, Joost. That parents don't try to fuck their kids
No, no,
up.
no, that's not the intention. There's not going, oh, this is a terrible child I gave birth to. Let's fuck up his life. No, it's just that they try to do well, and in trying to do well, they do badly.
Well, let's for today we'll disagree on that. Let's agree
Good.
to dis.
Finally, some disagreement.
Well, you know, I'm British and I'm polite.
Yes,
And I'm a type 9 mediator, so I like harmony, as you
indeed.
know.
Yes,
And I hardly ever get angry, hardly ever, as you know,
I know.
in your boxing of my personality
It's
type.
not
But
boxing.
I'm not
It's
nice when I do.
it's a very good map because it's very similar to the structure it's mapping. In this case, your evolutionary behavioral patterns. Um, so no, it doesn't matter because we can
No,
disagree
no,
on
it
this
doesn't
part.
matter.
It's an
But
irrelevant point.
the key thing is to help parents somehow in a simple, non-threatening, non-scientific way to say, do you know what? Even if your brain's got all those red flags in, doesn't mean to say your child has to.
Yes, no, I'm fully on board with that. So, as a way of hypnosis, the map is not a territory; it works wonders, and it is important to explain to more people that yeah, they only have their experience. Actually, I just did a course, half a day communication course, with a company that refurbishes automobiles, cars for the police and fire, because they don't, whatever. But these were very stubborn technical people. They were all sitting on, so we have to learn to communicate. And of course, they too have to learn that if they feel that something is the case, that it's just their opinion and not the truth. So I'm completely on board with it. I stand behind you. I support you.
So another way of using a version of this is in NLP we talk about thresholds, don't we? You know, when somebody just gets to that threshold and they push through or not. And I often think, you know, we talked before about an impoverished map, somebody who's got to reduce their behaviors, successful behaviors in the world, and what's on the other side of that. And you know, meta modeling is just such a fantastic way of just driving somebody right to the edges of their mental map of the world, and at the point that they don't have anywhere else to go because they're so unfamiliar with this external area that they historically would have gone straight back into the middle and reinforced this. But at that moment, we catch them with hypnosis and we then lead them to what's beyond that.
Right, but you said meta modeling, and I already thought it would be mere Milton modeling.
Well, meta first and then Milton. So it's the meta questions of, you know, discovering all of their beliefs and values and narratives about what's happening in here.
Yes, so in my understanding, you can hear in the way they speak, by the way they use grammar, how impoverished their world model is, because they will violate a lot of the guidelines of the meta model. But my question to you is, do you actually then call them out on these if there's a relevant violation of a meta model guideline? Or do you just take it in as information and then use hypnosis to change things?
Both, always.
Okay.
Depends what the where we're at with the the client in lifetime. Sometimes you just flag it, clock it, make a note of it. Sometimes it's important to draw to their attention. It just depends where we're at in the journey, what the desired outcome is, what their level of consciousness is, how it's connecting to other people. Too many variables in there
Good.
to answer.
By the way, for the viewers who don't know the meta model is a meta model of communication that is part of NLP. It has 12 rules or guidelines of how communication should be if you want to clarify stuff. And if people have a unclear world model or an impoverished world model, they will violate those rules. And as an NLP coach or NLP trainer, you can pick up on those violations and then make a guesstimate of what kind of weird things they were doing inside their head. The Milton model is the opposite, and that's actually where you violate those guidelines on purpose, because it then creates a lot of space inside the head of the understanding of the other person that you're talking to, where they will fill in the blanks with their own experience and their own learnings, and then they will actually do what you want them to do, even though they think that they have thought of it themselves, because they filled up the space that you created for them by their own experience and learnings. So that's for those people who are not familiar with the terms. All right, let's continue.
How long have we got, Joost? I didn't ask you that.
We've got till 7 p.m. or there's a 6 p.m. 6 p.m. in your case, because then I'm switching to the ABC NLP Practitioner Day 1 lesson. The English version, you are more than welcome to watch it as well, because then I'm going to explain, to clarify stuff, how things hang together in terms of ABC NLP, which is the scientific version of NLP that we're developing with the VU University here in Amsterdam.
Okay, that sounds great. So, I don't want to continue with this one. I'm just thinking about another way of using this sort of 3D version is it's quite fun with a family or a team in the corporate world, or any group of people, to give them the task of creating a group map with group flags.
But do they then have a group brain?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, effectively you do when you're working in a family, because one person's green flag can influence everybody else's.
Yeah, I do agree with you. It's not that I don't agree with you. It's just that I'm not sure whether the brain is the best place to place these flags. So it reminds me, if you talk about this or the flags, it just reminded me of an exercise we do in a course that I developed called NLP Magic. It's my spiritual course for people who are really weird. I always say NLP Magic is atheism for spiritual people and spirituality for atheists. It will get you to the right amount. Spiritual people believe too much, atheists believe not enough. So NLP Magic will bring you right in the middle of that. But one of the exercises that we do is called finding out your true will. And you actually create a timeline, and then you will put everything. You're going to go into magical thinking by thinking of cause and effects. And you're going to make a map through time of how you actually came to be here right now in the here and now. And then you are going to flag all those events that, all those causes that made you become here right now in the here and now. And you're going to flag them with either neutral or negative or positive. But we can actually, if you don't mind me stealing it, and I have to check how you actually plant flags, because I'm not that technical how to plant flags on a piece of paper. But we could actually create little flags rather than just circling it with a color. Do you feel that the adding the flags gives a lot of additional value over just coloring stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I use this in many different ways. It depends on the purpose of the of its use, but sometimes um, helping somebody to create a sigil
Mm-hmm.
for something that is, they know what it means.
Right.
They don't have to share it with the world.
Yes, but that will become an anchor, and what we call an NLP an
That's
anchor.
right.
And
So,
that's one of the most explicit ways of creating associative learning, because then of course the sigil will become an association with whatever people are doing inside their head.
so coming from the first principle of keeping people feeling safe,
Mm-hmm.
people and often holding the safe space for particularly work with children and families is you don't have to share anything.
Right. That's
Now, as NLPers, we're tracking all sorts of different levels, but they need to know that they're not going to be under a microscope. They're not going to be made to feel embarrassed or humiliated, or so
oh
keeping out of the story is really
yes,
important.
that's the important part, because I was thinking I embarrass and shame my trainees constantly.
I'm sure you do.
But I don't get into the stories. We don't want, we want as less of a story as possible, because of course the story itself doesn't help. It just exactly the opposite. It helps people justify the reasons why they feel bad and why they are into a problem that they feel they can't solve.
So we can use the flags in that way. I just buy bundles of them and put felt pens out so people can design their flags. It has meaning to them.
And they come with a how do you say it, with glue to attach them to stuff.
Yeah, you can just buy them like that.
Yeah,
You
but
buy
how's the bottom side of the flag? That's,
blue tack,
oh, it's blue tack. Okay, got
or
you.
bubble gum, chewing gum.
Yeah, I got you. Good.
Um,
So, did we already arrive at the Brainscape model? Is this the Brainscape model?
yeah, this is what I call it Brainscape
Right.
in our happy brain play, and then we also use it with cars. I don't know if I've got one here. Let me just go and see. You just talk for a minute, and I'm going to see if I've got
Okay. Well, I hope if there are maybe a good point in this at this time to answer questions. If you have questions, please put it in the chat on Twitch. If you're watching this through Facebook, great, thank you, we love you. And at the same time, you are more than welcome to also join us at Twitch, and you can actually chat with us, although currently there's not much action going on in the chat. So if there are any questions, please ask them, because we're happy to answer them.
Yes, I haven't got in this room. I've got a big bag full of toy cars.
I believe you.
And it's quite fun also to look at the different cars as movements through the brain. So sometimes you might be driving a Ferrari or a sports car and speeding really fast. But what happens when you come up against one of the green flags? Do you just speed through it? Do you go around it? What happens when you come up against a red flag? Whatever the metaphor is.
Right.
Do you sort of come to a screeching halt ahead of it, or do you go right up against it and bump into it, or do you call for an emergency vehicle? Do you call for a fire engine because again we can look at, okay, so what's the information in the fire engine or the emergency vehicle? Are we talking about people being rescued?
Yes.
Are we talking about their strategies for dealing with the red flag? Because sometimes, as you know, we need to get people to think, okay, so what's on the other side of the red flag? What would happen if the red flag...
That I don't know. I can understand how you use it for hypnosis. But again, as we look at the neurology of the neuroscience behind it, the brain, so you have the negative and positive experiences, but they're only negative and positive for our conscious mind. Because for our unconscious mind, it's just processing data. And So this is also, I think, the one thing that people misunderstand or need to know about, is that in your metaphor, the red flag, it's not that the red flag is negative, it's just a way of the unconscious mind of alerting the conscious mind that there is danger, and that the safety is needed, but only the unconscious mind doesn't understand why the conscious mind is complaining about it, because they think, yes, so I perceive danger, I alert you of the danger, why are you complaining? This is just how the brain is all to work. And again, the green flags are basically opportunities to procreate. So I make it very simple. You like simple models. So there's basically information that keeps you safe, and there's information that makes sure that you get babies. And we experience the first as negative and the second as positive. And of course, the positive behaviors are experiences are all kinds of layers. It's not like we want to hump everyone we meet that makes us feel good. At the same time, at the unconscious mind, it's just processing data. You can say the negative experiences are -1s, and the positive experiences are +1s. But again, it's in the same way that if you have a very sad movie on your hard drive, the hard drive really doesn't care that the movie is sad. So that the hard drive doesn't care whether you have a movie that makes you feel good movie, or whether you have this complete depressed, I don't know, Hungarian art house movie that makes you feel bad. The hard disk is just saying, yeah, this is just data, this is just zeros and ones. And that's how our unconscious mind works. It's only when that stuff becomes conscious that we actually feel bad and start to complain about it, or feel great and enjoy life.
And make up a story to help us make sense of it.
Yes, well, I don't think that helps us to make sense of it. It's that people are so the unknown is such a big danger item for the unconscious mind, that as soon as there is no story behind something, then the danger flags will just, or in your case the red flags, will just be activated over and over again. So for most people, their strategy is to come up with a story, because any story is better than no story. And as soon as there is a story, then the brain goes, oh yeah, now I know how the thing hangs together. Oh, I can be relaxed or relax a little bit more, because the big unknown has disappeared. Because we actually, one of the worst cases of that's in the Netherlands, is we had this one mall shooting in the Netherlands, the only mall shooting we ever had in the Netherlands. It was quite close to where we live, and actually in a mall that we sometimes shop. And the whole country was, of course, in panic when that happened. And then at the 9 o'clock news, there was the number one psychiatrist from the Netherlands live on the news, and she was going to explain why this happened. And the journalist asked her, so why this? Can you please explain why this happened? And she said, well, this happened because the guy who did it was crazy. And then the whole country went, oh, now we understand. It just didn't happen by accident. It's not something unknown. We understand. The guy was crazy. That's why he did it. And then we can continue with our lives. And that is how our society dealt with it. But that's also how the unconscious mind deals with bad negative experiences. And the story they come up with. So most of the time the story makes no sense whatsoever. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be a story, because anything is better than the great unknown.
Absolutely. And our brains are just running a prediction loop all the time.
Yes.
But exchanging those stories becomes very valuable to society, because if we exchange stories with brains that are like ours, then it reinforces all of the whatever we've got going on, doesn't it?
Yes. No, but there are two ways. We have two ways of learning, and the brain learns through associative learning and through instrumental learning, either building up associations or instruments for behavior. But we have also two, inputs into our system. That is, one is through experience, which is most of the people, of course, recognize. But the other one is through stories. Of course, the story you have to hear. But stories are actually processed very differently inside your mind than the experience that you have. And the great thing about stories is that you don't have to experience everything to learn it. Because for instance, I think that Chernobyl is a horrible disaster, but at the same time nowadays it's also a great nature refuge. But I'm so happy that I don't have to go to Chernobyl or to experience a meltdown of a nuclear reactor to learn about it, because I can learn about it through stories. People overlook, they both overlook, they give too much importance to the stories they create themselves, and they have too little understanding of how stories influence the way their brain works if the story is told by someone else. Which is a good thing, because for us hypnotists, we can then use the stories to influence people, because they're not as suspicious for stories as I am.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons why I'm so critical when, for instance, someone as lovely as you starts to talk about her models, because I am very suspicious of the stories people tell. I'm also very suspicious of the stories I tell myself, by the way. It's not with the words of the great Robert Anton Wilson. He said at one of his writings, never believe other person's bullshits completely. And then the sentence continues, and never believe your own bullshit completely.
Yeah, but there's an assumption in there that you even hear your own bullshit.
Oh yeah. That's the reason. That's why it's so extremely important to be very critical of what other people tell you, and at the same time what you tell yourself and what you tell to other people. But fortunately NLP has this fantastic, wonderful way of dealing with it, because as soon as you hear yourself violating the guidelines of the meta model in a relevant way, then if you are a well-trained NLP person, which is very rare nowadays, because most NLP people are complete idiots. Yes, they are. Well, I'm not supposed to say that they are. They behave like complete idiots. They're fantastic, wonderful human beings inside, but they behave like complete NLP idiots. Because the moment you learn the meta model, and you thoroughly understand what the meaning of the meta model is, then you can't but criticize your own stories and check, where do I violate the meta model guidelines in a relevant way. Because as soon as you found one of those violations, then you know, hey, here is something where my story is bullshit, because I just violated the meta model. And here is something where I can improve my life, I can improve my world model inside my head, and I can actually optimize the way my brain runs. So it's fantastic to find holes and gaps inside your own stories. That's why I'm always looking for errors.
What you want the outcome to be, though, Joost. I mean, if the quality of our life is surely the most important thing, and as Richard Bandler says, we measure life, the moments that we are living.
Yes, before you start doing all this critical stuff with the meta model, it's important to learn to feel good and enjoy life.
Yeah, but it's okay to talk a bit of bullshit and to exchange a bit of bullshit if it's not harming anyone and everything's moving in a flow that is working for you and your.
Well, the bullshit is always harming people, because it impoverishes their brain model, of their world model inside their brain. But sometimes the harm is so little.
Robots, come on.
Exactly. So sometimes the harm is so little, but it's not. I don't think that it's. It's the critical attitude is very very enjoyable. So why would that not be a very nice way of spending your time? That's and again.
I think it's we're stuck in semantics, really, because that word critical, perhaps. I know what you're talking about as a philosopher. You're talking about critical thinking, but I think it has a different connotation to. In general parlance, I think.
I try to be. I do the most negative general parlance semantic. Critical in the sense of being negative, being going, oh shit! I just violated the meta model in the deepest thinking of my own brain. This was one of the things that I cherished mostly, as this is where I stand for, and now I found a meta model violation in it. Oh shit! And then I can enjoy myself going, great, I can improve myself. I can become a better human. I can climb the mountain a little bit higher and get closer to the top of the mountain.
Wow. I can see you in snow boots and everything. Yeah.
Exactly. Suffering, because it is
You are.
very lonely at the top of the mountain and cold.
I choose a different
Yes?
a journey. I think laughing at the our own stupidity, and the stupidity of others, and giggling about it. And I'm a great believer, and any of my students will tell you that sometimes just singing the issue changes brain chemistry and makes us smile. Why
Definitely.
not?
Again,
Why not?
before you start to do the critical stuff, you have to be able to feel good and make sure that you enjoy life. If you're still struggling with those parts, it's pointless to start to be critical about your own thinking. That's you first have to automate a lot of stuff. I always say there are 5 tasks for humans, and people hate it when I talk about tasks. They think, oh, I don't have to do that stuff. You have to do the stuff. It's basically first task is to make good decisions. Second task is to feel good. Third task is to be able to communicate well. Fourth task is to be able to achieve your goals. And the fifth task is to enjoy life. And the secret is that the first 4 of those tasks, so good decision making, feeling good, communicating well, and achieving your goals, are all tasks of your unconscious mind. You should be able to influence your own brain processes in such a way that your unconscious mind takes care of decision making, of your emotions, of communications, and of achieving your goals. And only the 5th task, enjoying life, that's a task for your conscious mind. And so that's absolutely the first part. But once you have got that under your belt, then there is so much more that you can achieve with NLP and hypnosis. And then it starts to become important to be hypercritical. Let's call it that, hypercritical of the way you use language. That in the moment you notice that you are violating the meta model in a relevant way, that you start to feel very good because there's room for improvement, and you're going to optimize your brain even further. But if you miss those meta model violations, you still have a happy life because you have those 4 tasks under your belt and you're enjoying life, and 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 that's okay as well. But for some people, and I agree with you, not for all people, but for some people, they just like to climb mountains, and the reason, yeah, why? Yeah, because it's there. That's the only reason that mountain climbers give. Um,
I would just like to say, anybody, if anybody is listening or watching, and I have no idea,
we have
um,
currently 20 viewers according to my software. So
well, just if there are any of our viewers and listeners who don't know anything about NLP, don't listen to his words about violations and critical stuff, because those words are very. I wouldn't use them. I just think, how can we get more happiness, more joy in our life? And NLP is a wonderful technology
you think there are
to
bad words?
enable us. I'm not saying they're bad,
Oh,
Joost.
that's too
I
bad.
just, for some people, I don't use those words, and I don't like the word violation.
Okay,
I'm not saying I would never use it, because obviously there would be a place where I would
but it might be
use it.
it might be my lack of English command
Yeah,
of English language.
that's why I just wanted to
But
clarify that
but in my mind, how would you call? They're called meta model violations, right? Is there a different way of saying it?
well, I just don't think that we need to categorize it like that. I just think there is a wonderful model, which yeah, any NLPers out there should go onto NLP Cyber Group. There's a public page run by Laura Spicer, because Kathleen Laval is running a masterclass on meta model, and she is exquisite in her teaching of it. It's a
No comment.
it is an excellent model for helping us all to discover. It's a bit like, just discover what is
The mental model is a fantastic model.
for helping us to discover what is true inside this brain, um, the behaviors, the feelings, the outputs of the brain. It just helps us to discover more, to find out more, to gather more good quality information, so that either we know what to do next, or we know how to guide our clients to do something differently. So I just that's just my view.
I think that Richard Bandler, who came up with actually the meta model, for those who are know a bit about the history of NLP, the meta model was actually the way Virginia Satir talked to clients. So Richard Bandler, at the time, was a student, and he was taking care of a house of a psychiatrist that he worked for, and he happened to be the neighbor that year of Virginia Satir. And because she had bad eyesight, she asked him to chauffeur her around to all kinds of clients. And then he got to hear her speak to clients and to families. And Richard Bandler discovered that there was a structure in the way she used her language. And Virginia Satir, for her, it was completely unconscious. But Richard recognized the patterns that she used, and that finally became the meta model of communications. And but I think that Richard underestimates what he discovered by listening to Virginia Satir. I think the meta model is even better than everything you described. You are absolutely right in describing it as you just did, and yet it has even bigger implications than that. Mainly because the guidelines from the meta model, or the rules, if you want to call it like that, they actually reflect structures. So if you look, for instance, to cause and effect statements, that's one of the guidelines. Is if you want to clarify your message and you want to communicate in a way to clarify stuff, you should avoid cause and effect statements, because cause and effect statements distort communication. If you look into the brain, there's actually literally a part of the dopamine reward center that gives you a dopamine reward whenever you come up with cause and effect statements. And the reason behind it is what the neuroscientists think, is that it has an evolutionary advantage, in the sense that especially when you're born as a young monkey, humans are quite safe when they're born, but if you're a young monkey, you have to have a very clear sense of threats. And if you formulate threats in terms of cause and effect statements, even if you're wrong, it will still keep you safe, because you will move away from perceived dangers. And so we can see that also in human brains, or in babies' brains, they have already a very naive way of looking at cause and effects. So I think that actually the meta model is not only the meta model of communications, but actually describes in large part how our brain works. And that's another reason why it's so important to be hypercritical of how you use and formulate language. Because again, if you accept, and if you don't want to do it, I'm perfectly happy if you got those 5 tasks of life under your belt. So no complaint there. But for those people who want to reach even further, then it's the hypercritical attitude to the way you formulate your own ideas will enable you to actually improve your brain, the working that your brain works. Because if the meta model rules or guidelines reflect brain processes and areas of brain that work in a certain way, then if you run those meta model guidelines as good or as effective as you can, then you will enable those parts of the brain to also work optimal. So I think that being hypercritical is again, not for everyone, but for those people who want to excel, that is a very important next step. After you got all those 5 tasks of life under your belt, because you're still struggling with one of those 5, don't do hypercritical stuff. Just start to make sure that you get those 5 tasks under your belt.
I think, yeah, I certainly found over the last 12 months through lockdown, I am personally very critical of myself in the filter that you've just described, because I always know that I can improve. It's been my lifelong aim to get better. And I just think it's a fantastic question to start the day with. What's possible? What am I capable of? What's
Yes.
possible for me? I have no idea. I have no idea about this week, this month, this lifetime. I don't know, and I can't wait to find out.
Yes.
So,
But if I'm hypercritical, this sounds that you are applying the TOTI model very well to your own behaviors. Where you go, okay, this is the way I used in which I operate normally, and I use feedback loops to see if there are room for improvement. But it sounds also that has much to do with your external behavior and your positive well-being and being relaxed and happy and stuff like that. But not necessarily that you run the TOTI model also on your ideas and opinions. And in my way of looking at the world is that our views and opinions and beliefs and everything else is also internal behavior. That is actually also TOTI model processes. That can be where you can have feedback loops, alerting you that there is room for improvement. And what are those feedback loops? There we come again. The violations of the meta model guidelines. That the moment you notice yourself in your beliefs violating meta model guidelines in a relevant way, because most of the violations are irrelevant, you can just ignore those. Then my hope is that NLPers who have gotten those 5 tasks under their belt, of course, actually go, oh, now the total model that I'm running on my own belief is alerting me that there is improvement in the way I formulate my beliefs. And of course, there's little difference between beliefs and your formulation of beliefs. Is the moment you change, or you become more accurate and more precise in the way you formulate your beliefs, then you actually change your beliefs. Because you're no longer believing the old belief with the bad formulation, but you actually started to believe a new thing, a better thing. And that is not because the content changed of the belief, but only because the formulation of the belief changed.
It makes me think a bit about going back to the Brainscape idea.
Right.
Something that I often talk about with kids who, or well, anybody, but we are focusing on children. If somebody has a...
I think you need a better black felt pen.
Or I just need to...
Yeah, I can see it.
Yay. So a child story, a young person who has acquired a fear of spiders,
right?
For example, really simple. We know that we would call that a phobia.
Well, no, wait. There's a difference between a fear of spiders and a phobia of spiders.
True.
So where are we going? Which one of those are we talking? Oh, the phobia of spiders. Okay.
Let's make the assumption that I'm working with somebody who has a phobia.
Yes.
And we know we can interrupt those neural pathways really quickly and easily. The fast phobia cure is one of the simplest. I love phobias because we can change them in a heartbeat. Really, it's very quick. And
well,
easy.
It depends on the phobia, because a phobia of throwing up is very difficult.
Okay,
but it also has to do with other senses. So the sense of balance is then often disturbed or doing weird things. But there are phobias that are quite difficult, but most phobias are going very well with NLP.
That's right. But I'm making again the assumption that all of that background understanding of the different parts of the nervous system, whether that's vestibular or proprioception or whatever, it's all, we are taking care of all of that in the setup.
Right.
So let's make that assumption. But I just think it's really cool, fun and important to help the child know a little bit more about themselves, because a lot of them build beliefs around the so-called phobia, like there's something wrong with me,
yes,
or
absolutely.
Or it's a curse because everybody in my family's got it.
Yes, it's not only children; it's also what grown-ups do. They come up with all these justifications for why they can't change.
That's right. So, I think the easier I can make it in the setup, so that they've got a model in their heads to understand why this is going to work. This is, I think of Happy Brain, it's a model of play and creativity, but it is Milton model in the
Yes.
3 dimension,
It's
because
it's hypnosis.
all hypnosis, it's all we work largely in metaphor, we work lots, it's interactive, it's very kinesthetic, it's lots of play games. So it's like Milton model in in 3D.
Right.
And I
So
know
actually, I'm going to interrupt you a little bit, but only to support you. It's the same meta strategy that I use for coaching. So, but I don't use your Happy Brain or Brainscape model. But I always think, okay, we have to, as soon as possible, get the coachee into a way of thinking where they think that rapid change is possible. But I find it much easier to basically say what we're going to do is magic. So of course, the first question that you ought to ask a coachee is, what do you want to achieve with this coaching? But my way of phrasing it is, okay, let's pretend that NLP is this magic wand that you can conjure up with, or do any spell that you want. How would you like your life to be? Because I want to immediately to have a sense that, okay, what we're going to do is magic, and so of course I can rapidly change, yeah, because it's magic. And then, of course, I have the big advantage over other NLP coaches and trainers is that I actually use the neurogram brain types, where I can ask a couple of questions and then completely tell people a lot about their evolutionary behavioral patterns. And they experience it as magical, because how does this guy know this stuff about me? This is something that I had hidden for others for years. And he asked me 10 questions and then started to explain my life. So that also reinforces the idea that the whole coaching or training is a form of magic where rapid change can stay. So go ahead and continue
Yeah,
your story.
I think just to add to that, Joost, it's our responsibility in gathering information with our clients at the beginning to find out where we can match and build rapport with them. So, for some children, I run courses called Mind Magic.
Yeah, good. Yes.
For kids, for young people, if it works for them on that level.
Yeah.
If, on the other hand, that word isn't going to work, we'll use something else. So
Exactly.
the whole idea of our play kit, which is extensive use of toys and props, is to find where it fits. But coming back to this,
no, there's an interesting comment in the chat that I want to share with you.
okay.
So I've heard that them named meta-model challenges, deletion, distortion, generalizations, are happening in most communications as far as I can hear. We challenge where necessary to access how we formulate beliefs and values, internal processing, and the gateway to belief change. How we work out where to challenge is necessary and interesting to learn. To be clear, you're absolutely right. So it starts with the meta-model violation of a guideline or rule. And if we find it relevant, then we can do either what Kay already discussed. We can either make a mental note that we have to do something about it later on during the coaching or the training, or we're going to challenge it directly by asking smart questions. So you're absolutely right, but there's a clear distinction between the meta model violation and the challenge of how you challenge that meta model violation. That just to clear up the comments from the chat. Kay, please continue with your drawing.
So another drawing. So I find that, again, using this Brainscape model, I find it a useful way to help people to understand a simple metaphor for how a phobia has been created in the brain. So we go back to, how the brain's built up, and we explain a little bit about how, certain pathways get really strong, some are quite weak, some are not even joined together. We've got some green flags inside the brain, using the metaphor of earlier. We've got some red flags inside the brain, using the metaphor of earlier, and so on. So we've got that going.
Right.
And then, okay, so let's explore something. Let's pretend, again, we're going back to early childhood, There you are as a small boy Joost, and you're toddling along the floor on your hands and knees, and you're a magnificent learning machine.
Right.
Everything about you is you want to explore the world through your 5 primary senses.
Right.
That's what you are designed to do. And you're going along the floor and you find something. You don't know you found something because you don't have that level of consciousness, but your instinct is to move towards this thing. And you pick it up and you feel it, you smell it, you taste it, you look at it, you might hear something.
I'll eat it.
You would eat it, mostly you would eat it. And based on all of those sensory bits of information, you begin to create a little bit of a, I'm going to put it like a code. Obviously it doesn't look like that, but a little bit of a code. So we could go, okay, so what you see.
It's not a little bit of a code, it's a lot of a code.
I know.
It's what submodalities do in the brain.
Yeah. And that would lead on to that, yeah. So you've got your VACOG, okay, so all of that information goes into this little connection inside your brain. Now, in real terms, you've got hundreds of connections being created simultaneously. But to keep it flat, that's all that information is going in there.
Well,
So
just to clarify, in my viewpoint, this again would build an associative learning connection, because you have some kind of experience and it either will associate with something positive or negative, and it will be coded in the brain in terms of submodalities. So the whole meaning that your brain creates is not really inside your brain. And inside your brain there are only these codes called submodalities for the NLPers, and the meaning will later on be part of the community that you're part of.
yeah. So it's just conceptually that's there. And depending on how you process, so you have the sensory input, depending on how you process the sensory information, will influence what the output might be.
Right.
So let's assume that you taste the spider.
It's a spider. You didn't tell me it was a spider.
Okay.
No, I ate a spider. I ate a spider. Oh.
So, but you don't know. You're a toddler.
No, I love spiders. Very nice.
But you let's assume that you don't like the taste of it.
But let's assume that my parents see me eating the spider and then get. Am I too early? Oh, okay. I don't like the taste of the spider. I'm not going to say anything.
You're just too fast, Joost. So this is ABC. We're in simple land here. So the depending on your sensory experience, you will make connections inside the brain.
Right.
So
There's those associative connections.
Learning.
Yes.
So let's say that your primary caregiver goes, Joost, that's a spider. Can you say spider? And you might go, spider.
Right.
And so you're building more connections.
More associations. More associations.
More associations.
Yes, because now I know the taste of the spider, the look of the spider, but I also know what sound I need to make to get happy parents. Because I say cow, they say no, it's a spider.
And you will be receiving some form of waveform from the output of your primary carer. Their heart rate, their brain waves, their electromagnetic field will be resonating in some way, in a non-conscious way, for you to know you're safe to explore that thing called the spider.
Okay, I would just not call that a wave. I would say somehow we influence each other and we have no clue how we influence each other.
Well, I don't know. You can measure. If we just think of brain waves, we can
measure it. It's not the question that we can't measure it. The question is how baby is able to perceive it.
Oh, I see.
Yes, the sending the info through the electromagnetic field is no issue. We can actually look at that, of course. but it is not. It's not so. It's not the output that's a problem. It's the input. How does baby perceive it? But there's nothing wrong with saying I have no clue how this works, but we see it happening over and over and over. So it's highly likely that somehow there is communications between humans that we don't understand. Because
including the voice tone.
yes, now we know if there's voice tone and faces or stuff like that, then we understand it. But you can even pick up what people do if they're outside of your vision or outside if they don't make sounds. So one of the things we do in my master practitioner program is hypnotize each other without talking by just looking and using pace lead patterns. But once that happens, then we do it differently. Then we hide the hypnotist, and then he or she has to hypnotize people who can't hear them nor see him, and then still people will go into a trance. And of course, it also has to do with self-fulfilling prophecies. But we put people into a rows, and then you can actually see that most of the time people will fall into a trance. The closer they are to the hypnotist that they can't perceive, they will fall into trance first, and then the further will go later. And then depending on how strong the hypnotist is sending out whatever he or she is sending, then you can actually count how many people or how far the hypnosis travels. So I find it highly likely that humans are communicating even if they can't see or hear them in some way. But I'm very hypercritical of any so-called explanation if you think that it will clarify anything. If you use it to hypnotize parents or children, by all means go ahead with your wave thing. But if you're trying to clarify this to me, then I'm going to be hypercritical and say it's much better to say, here's something happening, we have no idea how it happens, but if you want to hypnotize people with it, you can call it a wave or a frequency or whatever.
With the setup for that would invariably include, I get them to say words to themselves and draw the pattern of what does that word sound like, what does that phrase sound like.
Right.
They themselves come up with the waveform that then I'm going to play to them now. So this is all in the setup.
Yes,
part.
that's part again of the hypnosis of the technique that you're using. Yes, that's not clarification.
No,
it's influence. We like influence. There's nothing wrong with influence.
Yeah. Okay. So the next part of this is going. Okay. So what happens when you go to, as a toddler, Joost, you go towards this thing that's creeping and crawling along the floor. You go towards it, and suddenly a primary caregiver shrieks at the top of their voice in a high alarming sound wave.
Don't eat the spider!
Which is like that.
Yes, if we have sound waves, then I'm perfectly happy to acknowledge that we hear those. Did you mean the sound wave of the noise or the sound that the parent made in the previous example as well? Okay, then I retract everything that I said, because of course sound waves we do pick up, also if you're a toddler.
Yeah. So the parent's brain will be doing that, and before you can say a nanosecond, the child's brain has to, because it's a survival reason. So all that communication that's going out, screaming, high pitched, all the submodalities, all the sensory input is saying alarm, 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 and so suddenly we create a very massive, big red flag inside the brain. So using this model.
Yes.
But interesting, and it depends on the level of so-called trauma, because we know that when we're dealing with PTSD sufferers, clients, that they don't tend to code the information very well. They just have tiny fragments of sensory data, and it all gets very distorted. Which makes sense in a way that forevermore any of those fragments can trigger that response. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this is something that at some unconscious level that you as a tiny child learn to become super vigilant, or to move away from or avoid anything connected to that thing that was present at the time.
Right.
And probably it was a visual. You would see the spider.
Right. Yes.
So probably it would be, this would be the big encode. So okay, so that has happened, and because your brain's really clever, this is me telling a client, it's a small child, you know, because your brain's really clever, it wants to remember that. And so for the longest time, through this big holographic brain, it's like anything connected to that thing, you want to put it in that camp, you want to just bring it over here. So any kind of spider, and anything called a spider, anything possibly connected through time, instead of the green flag, which is, oh, I'm going to learn about all the different spiders in the world. I'm going to build on that information. We build on it in a different way, which is to keep avoiding it. And so, isn't that cool? I would say, isn't that cool that your brain has got a really great protection to keep you away from spiders, because once it learned that the spider could be harmful. In fact, it wasn't even going to harm you. It was somebody else who gave you
Yes.
that.
Your parents, they were harming you. They were fucking you up.
We're in a loop.
I know.
So that's really cool. It's really cool when you realise that your brain's so clever.
Right.
So now let's, you know, and then of course we'll unpack it and go, okay, so what if instead of, you know, anything connected to spider gave you a red flag, what if it gave you a blue flag? Or what if it gave you a green flag? What would that look? So then we go into the setup.
Yes.
So again, it's just another way of using the Brainscape to help the
Yes, as an hypnotic technique in my book, but also in your book.
Model, totally.
Yes. Good. Well, thank you very much, Kay, for all this information. We have going on about for almost 2 hours, so I think we're going to give you a rest. If there are any questions, please ask the questions now, or be silent till 7 p.m. Central European Time, or 6 p.m. GMT. I don't know, is that Greenwich Mean Time? Greenwich Mean Time. It's very mean, the UK. That's probably mean since Brexit. The Greenwich Mean Time. But you're all very welcome. It will be another session in English, because I have my partners from the US who suddenly wanted to learn NLP after years of not wanting it, and we're going to do the ABC NLP Practitioner online at 7 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Minnesota time. That's what I know, probably because they live in Minnesota. If there are no questions, then no, Kay is already running away. So
I'm just getting something.
It doesn't seem like there are many questions, but she's getting something.
I can't. Oh yes, there it is. I was just going to say, that's the Happy Brain book.
Yes, there's the Happy Brain book. So when you want to know more about Happy Brain, the Brainscape, and all the hypnotic techniques that Kay has developed to work with children, really young children, that's also the interesting part. And but nowadays also with parents, of course, and even in business and all other grown-ups, then please buy the Happy Brain book. Or go to the megroup.com. I'll post the link in the chat where you can find a lot of other stuff from Kay.
And the only question really is, how do we help people to move their brain nometers into Thrive?
Good.
That's the only question.
No more questions. So thank you very much, Kay, for spending 2 hours with me and enduring my hypercritical thinking.
I'm used to it.
Good, good. And not only that, you keep smiling and did not run away. Um,
Type mediator.
no, yeah, we have had other NLP trainers who literally ran away from this kind of chat.
Well, maybe I'm not a type 9 mediator.
No, no, they were not my mediators. Even type 8 boss uh, who you would think would get confrontational, but he only became confrontational behind the scenes. He did not want to be on camera.
Oh,
Yes. But very nice talking to you. Hopefully, we are going to do this again in the future, the close future, because
I've got lots of other models for your criticism.
exactly. So that and I think this went really well. It's also a good, how you say, advertisement. So I can hope to seduce other NLP trainers to come on to the show to talk about NLP, because I think it has been a very good learning experience.
Yeah, do you think that was a seductive move? Yes,
What?
because I'm not convinced that was seductive.
What was seductive? What do
Oh,
you mean with seductive exactly?
you said you hope to seduce other trainers to come on.
Yes, I hope to seduce other trainers. It's not like I seduced you. I hope to seduce other trainers. That's
right, but
yes.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by seduce, because if it,
Basically, entice them to maybe it's just translation error. Entice them to come on. Whatever I have to do to get an NLP trainer to be, how you say, overcome his own uncertainty and be actually able to talk about NLP on a public forum, because they love to do trainings behind closed doors. But if you confront them with what are you saying behind those closed doors, they become very silent, because most NLP trainers are extremely uncertain about their own knowledge about NLP, and they fear hypercritical thinking. Unlike you, to be clear, that's why I love you, and that's why I really enjoy these 2 hours, because you showed that there's nothing wrong with, there's not only nothing wrong with hypercritical thinking. You might even think there's something wrong with hypercritical thinking, but that you, as an NLP trainer, you ought to be able to stay very relaxed and answer the questions when someone, an asshole like me, is asking hypercritical questions.
I do have to say that we have excellent training on the assisting team, and we have
dealing with assholes.
Live and responsive all over the world.
Right.
So, yeah, thanks to the good training.
Good, yes. But you're an example for many other NLP trainers who somehow missed this part of the whole NLP education.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for your time. I've enjoyed it very much.
Good. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.